All right, let's dive into the absolute chaos that is the Rick and Morty pilot episode, shall we? Because when I think of groundbreaking television, I think of the person who decided, you know what the world needs? A drunk scientist who's about to blow up humanity because his grandson won't flirt with a girl. That's right, I'm talking about Dan Harmon. And while I love the guy, the man's brain works in mysterious, often terrifying ways. He's the kind of guy who probably brainstorms his best ideas while staring into a bowl of cereal, wondering if the milk is sentient. And this episode, this absolute fever dream of an episode, feels like the ultimate Harmon brain dump. He took all the weirdest, darkest, most outlandish thoughts swirling around his head and decided, yep, this is it. This is how we launch a franchise. And the craziest part? It worked. It absolutely horrifyingly worked. We're about to get into a whole lot of messed up stuff, but I promise you, the ride we take today is nothing compared to what's coming. So buckle up, because the pilot episode of Rick and Morty is somehow both deeply stupid and incredibly brilliant, and you are not prepared for what's next. Seriously though, if you are not already subscribed, you are doing yourself a massive disservice. We're diving deep into this show, and trust me, the rabbit hole gets a lot weirder. So hit that button, ring that bell, and let's not miss any more of this glorious insanity together. Okay, so the pilot episode. What is this thing actually about? On the surface, it's Rick dragging a terrified Morty out of bed in the middle of the night to go on some kind of insane mission involving a flying car he built out of scrap metal. Naturally, Morty's already stressed about school, about this girl Jessica, about just existing. And Rick, in his infinite wisdom, decides the best way to help Morty become more assertive is to try and blow up the entire planet with a bomb. Yeah, you heard that right. A planet-destroying bomb. And his grand plan for humanity's new beginning? Morty and Jessica becoming Adam and Eve. Because apparently Rick thinks humanity's biggest problem is a lack of interspecies breeding. Or maybe just a lack of Morty getting laid. It's unclear, and that's part of the charm. Then, because Rick is Rick, he does that classic everything was a test bit, pulls the bomb after Morty takes the wheel, and declares Morty's newfound assertiveness a success. Oh, and he also managed to freeze some kid named Frank with a ray gun just because he was annoying. Standard Tuesday for this duo, but dig a little deeper, past the interdimensional hijinks and the impending global annihilation, and you start to see what this episode is really trying to do. It's a masterclass in character introduction, establishing the dysfunctional core of the Smith family and the utterly warped dynamic between Rick and Morty. Rick is the embodiment of teenage anxiety, overwhelmed by the world and utterly incapable of standing up for himself. Rick, on the other hand, is the ultimate enabler and abuser, a chaotic force of nature who views life as a cosmic playground and everyone else as disposable pawns. The episode uses the extreme stakes, literally blowing up the world, to force Morty into a corner, to see if he can break his programming of passive acceptance. It's an absurdly dark way to teach a lesson, but this is Rick and Morty, not Sesame Street. It also brilliantly sets up the show's core thesis, that the universe is vast, terrifying, and utterly meaningless, and the only way to survive is either through extreme nihilism or by clinging to the few connections you have, however messed up they may be. Where does this episode sit in the grand scheme of things? It's the foundation. It's the chaotic spark that ignited the entire wildfire. Without this pilot, none of the incredible seasons that followed would exist. It's not necessarily the best episode of the series by a long shot. Later episodes would refine the formula and deliver even crazier concepts. But as an introduction, it's nearly perfect. It throws you into the deep end immediately, assuming you'll either sink or swim. The writing is sharp, the jokes land, and the sheer audacity of the plot is captivating. It's messy, sure, and the pacing can feel a little frantic as it juggles multiple story threads, but that frantic energy is part of its charm. It's like a shot of pure adrenaline straight to the eyeballs. My verdict? It's an iconic, essential, and utterly bonkers start that perfectly encapsulates the show's unique blend of sci-fi madness and existential dread. Now let's break down some of the absolute moments that make this pilot episode a wild ride, a pure distillation of what makes Rick and Morty, well, Rick and Morty. First up, the whole damn bomb sequence. Rick literally yanks Morty out of bed, half-dressed, because he's got a surprise. And this surprise? A flying car he cobbled together. Morty's reaction? That classic deadpan, "Yeah, Rick, it's great," is pure Morty. He's seen this movie before. But then Rick drops the bomb, pun intended. "I had to make a bomb, Morty." The sheer panic in Morty's voice, that stuttering, "a bomb?" is the perfect encapsulation of his character. He's not just scared, he's existentially terrified. And Rick's explanation? "We're gonna drop it down there, just get a whole fresh start." It's so casual, so utterly divorced from any sense of morality, it's chilling. The writers could have gone in a million directions here, but they chose the most extreme, the most absurd. They could have made Rick's motivation anything, but they made it about a fresh start, which is hilariously nihilistic. My only change? I would have had Rick offer Morty a stale donut or something equally mundane while explaining his world-ending plan, just to heighten the contrast between the casualness of the delivery and the sheer horror of the content. It's the mundane juxtaposed with the apocalyptic that makes this show sing. I found myself audibly laughing at Morty's pure, unadulterated terror, but also feeling a cold knot in my stomach. That's the magic. Then there's the whole Jessica subplot. Rick's idea to make Morty and Jessica the new Adam and Eve is peak Rick. It's not about love, it's not about connection, it's about procreation and ensuring the continuation of something. Morty's desperate plea, "Jessica doesn't even know I exist," is so painfully relatable. We've all been there, right? That crushing feeling of invisibility when it comes to our crushes. And Rick's response, that he's not that kind of guy, and then assuring Morty that she's all for you, is such a bizarre misinterpretation of teenage social dynamics. He's trying to facilitate a relationship by planning to obliterate the current one. My alternative here would be to have Rick genuinely try to set them up, like really try, leading to an even more disastrous and awkward encounter than the one we saw. Imagine Rick trying to coach Morty on pickup lines while holding a detonator. The current scene works because it's a quick way to establish Morty's cush and Rick's warped priorities. But I think seeing Rick fail at being a matchmaker, rather than just skip to the apocalypse plan, could have been even funnier. It's this blend of social awkwardness and cosmic threat that makes the show so unique. I was practically screaming at the TV for Morty to just run away from Rick and his insane plans. But that's exactly why we love him. He always gets dragged back in. Speaking of being dragged back in, let's talk about the school scene. Morty's trying to navigate a normal life, and then Frank Palicky shows up. This bully is the perfect foil for Morty, representing the mundane, everyday horrors that are arguably worse than interdimensional monsters. Frank's whole deal, that his rich family can afford to get him out of trouble, is a great little jab at social class. And Morty's inability to stand up for himself, his stammering apologies, is heartbreakingly realistic. Then Rick freezes Frank. Just freezes him, with a ray gun. It's so casual, so violent, and so efficient. And when Morty questions it, Rick dismisses it with a casual, "I'll do it later." That's classic Rick. Consequences are for other people. My alternate take? What if Frank wasn't frozen, but instead Rick, in his typical fashion, just bought Frank's silence with some interdimensional trinket? Imagine Frank suddenly becoming best friends with Morty because Rick gave him a glowing rock that makes him happy. It would have been less violent, but equally bizarre, and a perfect way to show Rick's ability to bend reality and people to his will without resorting to outright freezing them. It's this ability to twist even the most mundane situations into sci-fi absurdity that makes the show so compelling. I felt a pang of sympathy for Morty, caught between a bully and a mad scientist. But also, I couldn't stop thinking, what if Frank's family finds out about this? That's the true horror. And the sequence in Dimension 35C, pure visual spectacle. Rick needs mega seeds from mega trees, and the landscape is just alien. Strange, mutated creatures lumbering around, a whole new ecosystem designed to kill them. Morty's anxiety spikes, and Rick, in his characteristic way, uses it as a teaching moment. Meeting them head-on, charging right into them like a bull, that's how we grow as people. It's a dark philosophy, but it's Rick's philosophy. And then the monster appears. The sheer terror, the frantic escape, Morty screaming, "We're gonna die!" is incredibly effective. Rick's subsequent attempt to reframe it as adventure and the smell of a whole different evolutionary timeline is a masterclass in gaslighting on a cosmic scale. I would have loved to see Rick actually struggle more here. Instead of just running away, what if they had to fight the monster, and Rick's solution wasn't to escape, but to pull out some bizarre, ethically questionable weapon that has terrible side effects? That would have been even more revealing about Rick's moral compass. The scene works as is because it's pure action and character establishment, but I always crave more exploration of Rick's twisted methods. It's this constant push and pull between danger and discovery, between terror and twisted enlightenment, that defines their adventures. Finally, the Mega Seed healing scene. Morty's legs are broken, he's in agony, and Rick is still focused on the seeds. Morty's outburst, calling Rick a monster, comparing him to Hitler, is incredibly powerful. He's reached his breaking point. He sees Rick for what he is. But then Rick gives him this magical goo, this alien balm, and instantly heals his legs. The relief, the wonder, the newfound strength Morty feels is palpable. It's a moment of pure, unadulterated power, tinged with the moral ambiguity of its source. My rewrite here would focus on the cost of that healing. What if the goo healed his legs but gave him some strange new affliction? Like maybe his skin turned green or he started speaking in tongues. It would maintain the sci-fi element and the theme of unintended consequences that Rick's inventions often bring. As it is, the instant healing feels a little too convenient. It's the juxtaposition of extreme pain and instant cure that makes it memorable. It's a classic Rick solution. Fix the immediate problem with a bizarre, potentially dangerous, but effective tool. It makes you wonder what else he's got stashed away. Let's talk about the people at the heart of this madhouse. First, Morty. In this pilot, he's a bundle of nerves, a walking embodiment of teenage angst. He's constantly apologizing, flinching, and begging Rick to stop. He's not the seasoned adventurer he'll become. He's just a kid who wants to pass math class and maybe talk to Jessica. His best moment, without a doubt, is when he finally snaps and takes the wheel of the flying car, yelling at Rick to stop blowing up the world. It's a flicker of defiance, a hint of the character he'll grow into. He's used well here, serving as the audience's stand-in, reacting with horror to Rick's madness. This episode really cemented him as the relatable anchor in Rick's chaotic storm, and it showed the show's potential for character growth. Then there's Rick. From the moment he bursts into Morty's room, he's an unstoppable force. He's brilliant, reckless, and utterly devoid of conventional morality. His surprise is a bomb, and his solution to Morty's problems is to rewrite humanity.
His entire performance is a masterclass in unhinged charisma. His best moment is probably his casual dismissal of the near-death experience in Dimension 35C, reframing terror as adventure. He's clearly the driving force of the episode, and his characterization here is pitch perfect. This pilot established Rick as the ultimate wild card, a character who could do anything and everything, and the show's trajectory is entirely dependent on his unpredictable nature. Jerry and Beth, Morty's parents, are mostly background noise in this pilot, but their presence is crucial. Jerry's pathetic attempt at assertiveness when he argues with Rick about Morty's schooling, and Beth's weary resignation to her father's madness paint a clear picture of a family constantly under siege. Jerry's rambling monologue about school being a waste of time is hilariously bad, and Beth's tired sigh as she deals with the fallout is relatable for anyone with difficult family members. Their scenes, though brief, establish the mundane struggles they face, which are hilariously contrasted with Rick's cosmic problems. They're used to ground the family dynamic, showing the normal life that Rick constantly disrupts. Their role here is to highlight how far removed Rick and Morty are from any semblance of normalcy. Summer, Morty's older sister, gets even less to do. Her comment about Rick possibly taking Morty out all night and her general disdain for her family's loudness are glimpses of her personality, but she's largely a spectator in this particular adventure. Her brief interaction with Rick about God and ripping off Band-Aids is a throwaway line that hints at Rick's nihilistic worldview, but it doesn't do much to develop her character. She's there to round out the family portrait, and unfortunately, her storyline isn't really explored in this pilot. This episode is all about Rick and Morty, and everyone else is just living in their orbit. Okay, let's hunt for some of those little nuggets that you might have missed while you were busy trying to process the fact that Rick was trying to blow up the planet. First up, the initial scene where Rick pulls Morty out of bed. Notice how Rick's flying vehicle is just a jumble of garage junk? That's not just lazy design, it's a visual metaphor for Rick himself. He's brilliant, but his mind is a chaotic mess of half-finished ideas and discarded parts. The fact that he could construct a functional,
albeit dangerous, vehicle from literal trash speaks volumes about his genius and his disregard for conventional methods. Most people would see a pile of old tools and a broken lawnmower. Rick sees the components of world domination, or at least a quick trip to save his grandson from a pop quiz. It's these little details that build the world and the characters beyond the dialogue. And the fact that Morty just goes along with it, even when he's clearly terrified, shows how deeply ingrained Rick's influence is. Then there's the mention of Principal Vagina when Morty is called down to the office. This is a classic piece of juvenile humor that the show absolutely thrives on. It's a silly throwaway joke, but it perfectly encapsulates the show's willingness to push boundaries and embrace absurdity. The fact that the principal has such a ridiculous name tells you everything you need to know about the school system Morty is stuck in, a system that Rick finds utterly pointless. It's a quick jab at authority and a reminder of the mundane world Morty has to return to after his interdimensional escapades. It's the kind of gag that makes you chuckle and then immediately question your own sense of humor, which is exactly what good Rick and Morty does. Another subtle gem is Rick's disdain for school. His rant to Jerry about school being a waste of time, where students just repeat 2 + 2 and get a carton of milk and a piece of paper that says you can go take a dump, is so perfectly scathing. It's not just a character quirk. It's a philosophical statement about the nature of education and learning. Rick believes in real-world experience, in pushing boundaries, in learning through chaos, not through rote memorization and arbitrary rules. This episode establishes his worldview from the outset, showing why he's so dismissive of Jerry's conventional parenting and why he's always dragging Morty into his own brand of education. It sets up a central conflict of the show: structured learning versus chaotic experience. And let's not forget the subtle foreshadowing of Rick's nihilistic worldview. When Summer mentions seeing a singing show, Rick's curt response, "There is no God, Summer. You gotta rip that Band-Aid off now. You'll thank me later," is a chilling glimpse into his philosophy. It's delivered so casually, as if discussing the weather, but it's a profound statement about the lack of inherent meaning in the universe. This isn't just a throwaway line. It's a core tenet of Rick's character and the show's overall theme. It tells you that Rick's constant pursuit of knowledge and adventure isn't about finding meaning, but about confronting the meaninglessness and trying to find some sort of personal satisfaction within it. It's a dark sentiment, but it's delivered with such deadpan humor that it's impossible not to be captivated. Finally, when Morty is suffering with his broken legs and calls Rick a monster, comparing him to Hitler, it's a huge moment. But what's even more telling is Rick's immediate, unbothered response. "Okay, hold on just a second, Morty." He doesn't apologize. He doesn't get defensive about the Hitler comparison. He just pauses, analyzes, and then offers a solution. This shows his complete detachment from the emotional impact of his actions. He's not a villain in his own mind. He's just a scientist solving problems. The fact that he can pull a magical healing substance out of his pocket without batting an eye and then immediately shift back to his original mission speaks volumes about his priorities. It's these subtle character moments, these little flashes of insight, that make the show so much more than just a series of crazy adventures. So what if they did it differently? Let's take that bomb scenario. What if, instead of Rick suddenly deciding it was a test and grabbing the wheel, Morty actually had to blow up the world? Imagine the sheer trauma of that. Morty forced to be the instrument of humanity's destruction and then having to live with that knowledge. It would be a much darker, much more psychologically damaging episode, but it would also be incredibly powerful. It would force Morty to confront the ultimate consequence of Rick's influence, not just run away from it. Or what if Rick genuinely was trying to make Morty and Jessica the new Adam and Eve, and the bomb was just collateral damage? Imagine Rick trying to force them together, literally. He's not just erasing humanity, he's trying to engineer its rebirth in the most perverse way possible. That would be a truly disturbing exploration of Rick's twisted desire to control and create, and it would elevate the stakes from global destruction to a deeply personal, existential horror for Morty. The current ending feels a bit like a cop-out with the "it was a test" line. While it works for establishing Rick's manipulative nature, A more concrete outcome could have had a more lasting impact on Morty's character arc from the very beginning. It's the idea of true consequence, the unshakable burden of actions, that could have made this pilot even more groundbreaking. Another possibility, what if the whole trip to Dimension 35C wasn't about Rick getting megaseeds, but about him trying to escape something? What if the monster wasn't just a random hazard, but something he was actively running from? This would add a layer of mystery and immediate threat. We wouldn't know what he was afraid of, but seeing Rick, the invulnerable genius, showing genuine fear would be a game changer. It would force Morty to step up, not just for himself, but to protect Rick. The current setup where Rick is the all-knowing pursuer works, but a scenario where the roles are reversed, even temporarily, could have added a fascinating dynamic and a more complex motivation for their desperate escape. It would also allow for more character development for Morty, showing his capacity for bravery when the stakes are truly life or death for both of them, not just a perceived threat to Rick's mission. My verdict on the Rick and Morty pilot? It's a solid 8.7 out of 10. What keeps it from a perfect 10? Honestly, the "it was all a test" ending, while classic Rick, feels a little too convenient. It negates the genuine terror Morty experienced and the potential for him to have truly taken control. If that ending had been more definitive, if Morty had actually had to make a difficult, world-altering choice that wasn't instantly undone, it would have been a perfect launchpad. This episode is for the viewers who crave intelligent, dark humor wrapped in a high-concept sci-fi package. It's for people who enjoy existential dread served with a side of laughs. The viewers who will love it are the ones who appreciate the show's willingness to go to incredibly dark places while still being incredibly funny. The ones who will be bored are probably expecting a more traditional animated sitcom, one that shies away from the existential and the absurd. What would have pushed it higher? A more permanent consequence from the bomb scenario, or a less convenient resolution to Morty's physical peril in Dimension 35C would have solidified its place as a flawless pilot. Ultimately, this episode is a testament to Harmon and Roiland's audacious vision, kicking off a series that would redefine adult animation. It was a bold gamble, a chaotic explosion of ideas that perfectly set the stage for the madness to come, proving that sometimes the best way to start is by nearly destroying everything.